Well, as the clock ticks down to the August 1st trade deadline for Canada and the US, the EU has already reached some sort of an agreement with President Trump on trade. And here to talk about that is our European contributor, Christian Falk. Christian, this deal was announced on Saturday. It seemed to me that President Trump, as usual, did most of the talking and bragging about what a great deal it was. What is the overall reaction in the last couple of days since that deal was announced?
Well, mixed feelings from European country leaders. We had negative response from France. They said it was more like they expressed the concern that this deal is not a real deal, but more or less a disaster for the European Union. On the other hand side, like German Chancellor commented on it, Friedrich Merz, it is more like a pragmatic approach in order to not escalate the trade conflict between the European Union and the US. I mean, we had 30% on the table, which would be actually really disastrous for the European economy. So mixed feelings from all sides. But yeah, here we are, 15% fixed, which will obviously bring tens of billions of dollars into US pockets for the next coming years.
Is there any discussion in the aftermath of that announcement on the weekend that, in fact, it's not really a deal, a signed agreement, everything is hard and fast, that, in fact, this is more of a framework for negotiations?
Well, it seems more or less that now Europe accepted this deal. We were really afraid of, and the other, not afraid, but it showed like really who has still the power in the hands. And Trump wanted the deal. Now he has the deal. We avoided the 30% tax as of 1st of August. Now looking at 15%, which is, favorable in that sense. But all over, we have all mixed feelings about this trade deal. However, we know that the Trump administration is a couple of years in. And when you look at those numbers or the deal, there's no real timeline on how long this deal is going to last, Yeah.
Does the deal require individual countries to approve it before the union can say it is a done deal?
Basically, now it's a done deal. That's why we have a lot of voices against this, a lot of comments from that side. Like people are really not that happy and all over Europe. But as said, like it is like it's a rational. Like Chancellor Merz said, a rational approach, and we want to keep on going with the US. And it's also from the European Union point of view, we wanted to show that there's still unity between the US and the European Union, which was somehow fragile when you saw the development over the last couple of months, looking into the tensions between the European Union, the NATO, and specifically the US. Yeah.
Aside from only having to deal with 15% in tariffs, do you feel that there's any kind of a significant financial gain for the EU in the long run here, or is it just kind of a flat line, business as usual approach?
Well, I mean, the 15% is only one-sided, so it will definitely benefit the US economy. I mean, we will have to reduce our prices when importing or exporting our goods to the US, to the USA. And that's actually not a deal because we did not get anything out of it. It was just we just wanted to tell them, listen, we know there is a trade deficit between the US and the European Union. We want to make it back. And especially, and was reportedly told by some of the European leaders, showing to the world that the US and the European Union are not enemies, but there's a lot of unity and a strong partnership behind. From that point of perspective, yes, the European Union will lose money, so will also the US with those tariffs. But the more important picture all over was to show unity to the rest of the world, specific in direction Russia and China.
All right. And are you watching closely as to what's going to happen between Canada and the US as to how that deal may turn out if, in fact, we do have a deal by Friday?
Well, yeah, but we're already, like, it was back in June, I think June 25th, where there was already an agreement between the European Union and Canada in terms of closer collaboration in military, but also in trade. So whatever happens between Canada and the US, like, our arms are wide open to welcome Canada. And what we heard, like, over the last days, there were some polls, like, also talking to Europe, to Canadian citizens, how they feel about joining the European Union. And surprisingly, a big number said that there were really positive surprise, or like, we're saying, yes, we want that. I think there were around 44% of the Canadian population is happy to discuss that idea. So I think no matter what happens between the US and Canada in the coming days, there will be still trade between both countries because they're really intertwined. But like, we're here to trade with Canada and with open arms, you know. It's clear that everyone wants to distance themselves a little bit from the US. We cannot do it 100%, but here we are. And there will be new trade flows between all kind of countries. Yeah.
Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper the other day in a panel discussion here in Canada suggested that he always approached negotiations so that there was a win-win on both sides, that each side came out with something that they had gone in looking for, and it was better to be able to announce that kind of a deal. I sense by what you're saying and what you're hearing from, you know, in general conversation, that in fact, you're not really feeling like this was a win-win. It was more of a win for the US, and the European Union kind of went along with it. Is that a fair assumption?
It is a fair assumption, but still, we also have to admit somehow that there is a big trade deficit between the European Union and the US. And we could have lost much bigger because our trade surplus, like export surplus to the US, is so much higher than the US. I think our exports going into 600 billion to the US, and the other way around is 400. So there is definitely a trade deficit. And at some stage, this would come into the discussion. So we're just happy that the 30% are not imposed. Let's put it like that.
All right. Christian Falk, thank you so much for giving us this overview from the European viewpoint on your new trade deal with the U.S. And as we're discussing this evening, we're in the countdown mode to our deadline of August the 1st. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, Gary.